How does Wharton's use of dashes support the tone of the text? In this lesson, you will learn how an author establishes tone by analyzing the impact of diction and word choice on the text. We have been doing a close reading of Mrs. Manstey's View by Edith Wharton. Each time we dive deep into the text, we get a stronger understanding of the connotative or implied meaning. Identifying the tone is a very important part of obtaining the connotative meaning. Remember, tone encompasses the attitude towards the subject and towards the audience implied in the literary work. There are 4 building blocks to help identify the tone of a piece of literature. One part of that structure is imagery. One way to identify imagery is to look at the descriptions that appeal to the 5 senses: sight, sound, touch, hear, and smell. In Mrs. Manstey's View, Wharton does a fantastic job painting a picture of what Mrs. Manstey sees when she looks outside her window. Another way Wharton establishes imagery is through sound. When Mrs. Manstey confronts Mrs. Black, Mrs. Manstey gasps in shock and almost screams with desperation. Both of these descriptions help paint a picture. Another element used to help develop the tone is characterization. We have focused our attention on 2 characters so far, Mrs. Manstey and Mrs. Black. Mrs. Manstey is part of the lower class. She spends her time alone in her apartment looking out of her window. Mrs. Black is a landlady. She is part of the upper class, and she is all about making money. That is why she is building the extension. She needs more room so that she can rent to people. There is definite tension between these 2 characters because they just don't see eye to eye. A third part of identifying the tone is through the setting. We know that Mrs. Manstey's View takes place in the 19th century New York, when there were stark differences between the social classes. It is clear that these class issues play a role in the plot. It helps us understand why Mrs. Black and Mrs. Manstey treat each other the way they do. Another part of the setting is Mrs. Manstey's apartment. She stays in her apartment, looking outside her window, admiring the yards of the upper class. The final part to identifying tone is through diction. Diction is word choice that conveys a certain effect. It is the part of the building block that we are going to focus our attention. Formal and informal diction are the most easily identifiable types of diction. Formal diction is used when addressing a highly educated audience, like sermons, scholarly journals, and legal documents. Informal diction is used when addressing a familiar or specific audience, like personal letters, emails, and documents with conversational or entertaining purposes. Dashes are used to set off explanations in informal manner. When you read a text that uses a lot of dashes, like Mrs. Manstey's View, the diction would be considered informal. Dashes are also used for emphasis or interruption, and they signal a shift in the tone. So, when you are trying to determine how dashes support the tone, you can follow these 3 steps. First, reread a portion of the text and circle any dashes you find. Second, ask, what purpose do these dashes serve? Third, reread the words that come after the dash and ask, what emotion is conveyed through these emphasized words? For this lesson, we are going to focus our attention on page 6. This is the first time Mrs. Manstey confronts Mrs. Black about building the extension. As we read the text, we are going to circle the dashes. Is there anything I can do for you, ma'am? Mrs. Black continued. My house is full at present, but I am going to build an extension, and it's about the extension that I wish to speak, said Mrs. Manstey suddenly. I'm a poor woman, Mrs. Black, and I have never been a happy one. I shall have to talk about myself first to make you understand. Next, we are going to ask ourselves, what purpose do these dashes serve? Remember, there are 3 functions of the dash: emphasis, interruption, and a shift in tone. Here, the dash appears at the end of Mrs. Black's dialogue. In fact, the dash appears before Mrs. Black finishes her sentence, so this dash is there to indicate an interruption. The next dash comes in the middle of the sentence, so we know it is not to indicate an interruption. That means that this dash is used to show emphasis and a tone shift. Let's go back into the text to make sure that there's a definite tone shift. Now, at the beginning of the conversation, Mrs. Black says, is there anything I can do for you, ma'am? She's actually being quite polite here. Now let's look after the dash. Mrs. Manstey said, to make you understand. This is short and rude. So I definitely see a tone shift here. And Mrs. Manstey is trying to emphasize her purpose for being at Mrs. Black's house. So now that we have identified the purpose of the dash, we can now move on to step 3 and ask ourselves what emotion is conveyed through the emphasized words. We know that there is a shift in tone. It goes from polite and cordial to tense, uncomfortable, and confrontational. I envision a boxing match getting ready to begin with Mrs. Manstey on the offense and Mrs. Black being blindsided by the ensuing battle. Identifying the tone early is really important. Recognizing it at this stage will help us prepare for even more difficult analysis such as theme and structure. So when you are reading a text that uses dashes, you can follow these 3 steps to help you determine how those dashes support the tone. First, reread a portion of the text and circle any dashes. Then ask, what purpose do these dashes serve? And third, reread the words that come after the dash and ask, what emotion is conveyed through these emphasized words? In this lesson, you have learned how an author establishes tone by analyzing the impact of diction and word choice on the text.